Well-known Texan Stanley Marcus is quoted in his book, Minding the Store, as saying, "I decided to go to camp, but what was most important was that I made up my mind in advance to go out for every sporting event, whether I was any good or not, to play the game as hard as possible, to be a good loser and a good camp citizen. My athletic prowess was not that good, but my efforts were noticeable, and by early August I was awarded the camp's top camper award. This was probably my first overwhelming success in any endeavor for which I alone was responsible. This experience proved to me that I was the master of my own destiny to a great extent, and that I could accomplish any reasonable goal I might set. During my high school days in a public high school, I profited from my camp experience by becoming an active participant in a number of activities. Governors, a President of the United States, children of presidents, United States senators, United States congressmen, well-known authors, musicians, Broadway and screen stars, outstanding athletes, military leaders, college presidents, and famous oil men are others who state that their experiences at summer camp contributed to their success in life. But most importantly, thousands of Texas and Oklahoma children have learned skills, been taught to appreciate the great outdoors, and were inspired by individuals who dedicated their lives to organized camping. Since 1998, the Texas and Oklahoma camping family has lost several individuals who made their mark on the lives of many, many campers. Betty Barsh. Betty directed the Lutheran Camp Lone Star in her volunteer service to Girl Scouts and the American Camp Association was broad. Camp crafts and outdoor instructor, standards visitor, Texas Standards Chair, and twice president of the Texas section of ACA. Sandy Bateman, Rocky River Ranch. Sandy was a camp nurse and horse program director at Rocky River Ranch starting in 1966. In 1971, she became co-owner and director of Rocky River Ranch. A memorial was erected at Rocky River Ranch by the camp's Alumni Association that says, "Sandy spent her life building an enduring legacy of love for children, for horses, and the unique and timeless bond that forms between them." Ray Bean, Camp Grady Spruce. For more than 40 years, Ray Bean directed a YMCA camp, first in Arkansas, then in Texas at Flaming Arrow, and then for 35 years at Camp Grady Spruce. He was very proud of the mission of Camp Grady Spruce and his work there. The girls' camp at Camp Grady Spruce was named Ray Bean Camp. To many, Ray Bean was considered the godfather of camping in Texas.
I think the 20s was very much the start of organized camping. Now, you know, camping is not new. We often say Moses did a pretty good job with his camping, you know, but as organized activity, that was when it started, was in the 20s. And I think it's here to stay. In our first camp, there were no showers, no running water. You had to take your bar of soap and go down to the lakefront every day.
Tom Friedman, Echo Hill Ranch. In an article for Texas Monthly magazine, Kinky Friedman wrote the following about his father. "For many years, my parents owned and directed Echo Hill Ranch, a summer camp near Kerrville where I grew up, or maybe just got older. I remembered my dad, Tom Friedman, talking to all the campers on Father's Day in the dining hall after lunch. Each summer he'd say essentially the same words. For those of you who are lucky enough to have a father, Now is the time to remember him and let him know you love him. Write a letter home today. Many years have passed since I heard Tom's message to the campers, but love, I suppose, has no sell-by date. Luther Graham, Camp La Junta. Well-known owner of Camp La Junta, Luther left his special mark of strength and leadership on all his campers. He was a man's man in the true tradition of a Texas cowboy. Inez Harrison, Camp Mystic. Inez and her husband Frank came to Camp Mystic in 1947, where they were directors and part owners until retirement in 1987, when Inez was named Director Emerita. In her book, Just As We Were, Prudence McIntosh quotes Inez as saying, "The camp spirit of Camp Mystic is love, and that spirit pervades our whole camp. Mystic girls learn to love God first, others second, and themselves last." Prudence goes on to say about her visit with Inez, "Before the day was over, however, I would know that Inez Harrison is no naive grandmother, and that beneath the almost cloying sweetness, there is a strong, intelligent organizer with a sound, visceral sense of what these little girls need and what their parents expect." On the eve of her 92nd birthday, Inez amazed and inspired the camp family by climbing the Mystic Climbing Wall. Dan Hemphill, Camp Summer Life. Dan believed that the future belonged to our children and that we should invest in them. Dan not only was the owner of Camp Summer Life, he was also the founder of the Camp Horsemanship Association and very active in ACA. Dan was also a well-known citizen of Odessa. Dan said the following in a publication before his death: "Everything you do and everything you get involved with should, when added up, total some contribution to progress for us and for our survivors. We should leave something worthwhile behind." Jean Jeffrey, Camp Waldemar. Jean was one of the first campers at Waldemar, and she also loved her church and loved teaching swimming. Active in the American Red Cross, Jean volunteered countless hours over the years, serving as instructor and instructor trainer for many camps, and she was head of waterfront at Waldemar. Laura Jean Johnson, niece of Ora Johnson, founder of Camp Waldemar. Laura Jean was one of the first campers at Waldemar in 1926. She worked for Waldemar for more than 17 years and was a treasured figure each summer. Kitty McGee, Heart of the Hills Camp for Girls. When Kenneth and Velma Jones decided to convert Heart of the Hills into a summer camp in 1953, they appointed Kitty to be the director. She served in that capacity for 14 summers. Kitty had been director at neighboring Camp Mystic prior to helping establish the Heart, and was active in the American Camp Association, serving as standards visitor and section president. In 1980, the Kitty's Corner Award for Counseling Excellence was established at Heart of the Hills Camp in recognition of Kitty's high standards. Kitty grew up going to camp and never lost her love for the joy that camping brings youth. Her heart was huge, and she was a legend in camping and women's athletics.
Oh, I loved it, you know, anything outdoors, whether it's swimming or horseback riding or archery or whatever you had outdoors. I was an outdoor girl. You know, whether you say I was also an outdoor girl, I always had a ball in my hand, some kind of a ball.
Tom Manison, Camp Manison. Tom was a man who got things done, a man who always had clever and innovative ideas, and who contributed heavily to youth development at ACA. Tom was beloved in his town of Friendswood, home of Camp Madison. Connie Reeves, Camp Waldemar. In an article after Connie's death, Marcia Elmore, owner of Camp Waldemar, was quoted as saying Connie's lifelong motto was, "Saddle your own horse." The article went on to say Connie was a Texas legend. Independent and strong-willed, opinionated and usually right, witty and dry, smart and tough, and those who knew her and worked with her testify that Connie was one of Texas camping's greatest. Miss Peggy Hilliard Rotzler, Camp Fern. Camp Fern was founded in 1934 by Uncle Vernon and Aunt Mag Hilliard, who wanted to provide their daughter Peggy and other area youth a summer retreat. Eventually, Peggy took over operation of the camp along with her husband, Bill Rotzler. Today, Camp Fern is owned and operated by Miss Peggy's daughter, Margaret Thompson, the granddaughter of the founders. Ann Stacy Eastland Spears, Camp Mystic. Ann's life at Camp Mystic began in 1933 when her parents sent her to Mystic as a camper. She served the camp for many years as the chairman of the board. She was very proud of her family's continued involvement in the running of Mystic. When interviewed by a camper, Ann once said, "We always strive to improve our camp, yet it is our hope that the wonderful spirit and the traditions of Mystic will remain just the same for future generations." Gordon Chief Whitelock, Camp Peniel. Gordon Whitelock came to Texas in the summer of 1938 after graduating from Moody Bible Institute. Chief Whitelock is credited with starting one of the first modern Christian youth camps in Texas in 1941, originally held in the Sam Houston National Forest. He named his program Camp Peniel, a Hebrew word which means the face of God.